Breaking news from Israel. The death toll from a stampede during a religious event in the country has risen to 44. More than 100 people are injured. Thousands have been evacuated from the scene at Mount Meron in the north of the country. Rescue services have indicated the site was overcrowded. They said authorities had originally allowed 10,000 people to gather, but at 3 times that number were actually there. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a heavy disaster. Emergency services have deployed 6 helicopters to evacuate the injured. Some witnesses say children were among the dead.
We were standing and waiting for our friends. We were going to go inside for the dancing and stuff. And all of a sudden we saw paramedics from Madda and whatever running by like mid-CPR on kids. And then one after the other started coming out, ambulances. Then we understood like something's going on here. And we just went to the side as the ambulances were driving in and out. And we waited until we were able to slowly get out.
For more on that, let's talk to our correspondent Stephanie Freed in Tel Aviv. Stephanie, will the death toll continue to rise, and how's the rescue going?
Well, in terms of the death toll, it's impossible really to know. There are a lot of people that are in critical condition, and you mentioned the number 100. They're talking about 150 people who are injured, and they're dispersed among 4 area hospitals in the northern area. In terms of evacuating people, that's another tricky question, because right now what's coming up is that actually despite that crush, despite this disaster, and the Prime Minister said it, calling it a disaster, the talk is that it could be one of Israel's biggest peacetime disasters in history. What's happening despite all of that is that some of the worshippers who went up there are saying they want to stay, and they're refusing to evacuate the area now. They want to continue praying, perhaps pray for the injured and dead at that site. It's considered a holy site by the people who were there. Very thorny if there begins to be now a standoff, because there's not only obviously the disaster of what happened, people are injured, getting people out of the area, but if there's now a standoff with police, that's going to add an entirely different element to this disaster.
And Stephanie, one more question. We know the whole world, including Israel, is still fighting the pandemic. So how come such a large gathering, originally set for 10,000 people, but actually 30,000 people entered, were allowed?
Exactly. And there were, that's what's being talked about broadly on the Israeli stations this morning, because the police were not giving the permits. The police were against a massive gathering. Basically, it went out of control. The pandemic is still happening. Israel's far ahead. They removed mask-wearing regulations recently. So Israel is ahead because they're vaccinated, but at the same time, still an issue. Essentially, this is something, again, that went out of control because the permits for that many people, the police were very much against that, and very much there were arguments with the religious community, with certainly the government. It wasn't allowed. And the result is what we're seeing now, which is a tragedy. So obviously, definitely, the pandemic was on people's minds and this gathering before it ever even got underway.
Thank you very much. Our correspondent Stephanie Freed in Tel Aviv, and CGTN will keep you updated on this developing story in Israel.